Hey, what's up? Welcome to a new video on my channel. Today's finally the day where I do the comparison video between the Zowie GS-R and the Steelseries QCK Plus. I've promised this video about a year ago when I unboxed the Zowie GS-R. I promised you guys a detailed comparison between these two mouse pads. It took a long while until I could give you the comparison, but here it is. And honestly, I think this video can give you a lot of insights in which mousepad I liked more, because I used the Zowie GS-R for a year, and before that I've always used the QCK Plus. So in this video I'm going to compare the two and tell you which one I liked more and why. And I'm also going to tell you what I really like about both mousepads and what I dislike. I want to start the comparison by comparing the sizes of two mousepads. I'm going to lay the GS-R on top of the QCK Plus to give you an idea on how they differ in size. The QCK Plus is a bit taller, but the Zowie is a bit longer. The QCK Plus is 40 by 45 centimeters and the Zowie GS-R is 39 by 47 centimeters. So in terms of size, the switch didn't really matter for me. Both mouse pads just feel great to play on in terms of size. The difference in surface area didn't really make any difference for me. These pads share a lot of similarities. Both are cloth pads. They're made of a certain type of cloth, which is ideal for a laser mouse to track. They both share a lot of the same advantages and disadvantages. One of them is that they collect sweat, dust, and skin particles, which is a big disadvantage because the mouse pads actually lose their feel after a few months. And there we have the first difference between these two pads. The Zowie loses its feel much quicker than the Steelseries one. The Zowie loses its feel in about 1.5 months, whereas the QCK Plus loses its feel in about 3 to 6 months. But luckily, if you clean the mouse pads thoroughly, then you get that feel back. But with the Zowie, you'll have to do that much frequently than doing that with the QCK Plus. So after a thorough wash and clean, they feel great again, but it's just high maintenance, and the Zowie GS-R is in that case more maintenance than the Steelseries one. So when buying a mouse pad, just remember that if it's a cloth pad, it will need some maintenance because it will get slower after a while. So both of these pads share this disadvantage, but the Zowie just loses its feel quicker. If I continue on with what I dislike about the Zowie mousepad is the rubber grip that should make the mousepad stay on your desk. In my opinion, this one is worse than the Steelseries one. This mousepad tends to glide over your desk, especially if you leave it there for a week or two without cleaning the bottom. It just gets dirty and starts sliding everywhere. Whereas the QCK Plus does a much better job in staying on your desk. It's just a little more grippier, even to the touch. It feels more grippier than the GS-R. One thing I like with the GS-R is that the edges are stitched, which makes it much more durable. If we look at the QCK Plus mousepad, we already see that the edges start lifting. I've used this mousepad for about a year and then switched over to the GS-R, which I've been using for a year. The problem with the GS-R is that the edges, well, they start to get a little bit rough, but it's nowhere near as big of an issue as the QCK Plus, where the cloth just starts to leave the rubber. One thing I dislike about the GS-R is the stitched on logo. It sometimes interferes with my hand or my mouse. You can really feel the presence of that. When looking at the QCK Plus, it's much less noticeable. You tend to not feel it if you get really close to the edges. I play with a super low sensitivity, so I use the whole mouse pad. I need that whole surface. Sometimes when my mouse pads hit this edge, I'm just a little bit thrown off. So both pads are cloth, but they differ in the type of cloth, which leads to the fact that the Zowie GS-R is much more of a control pad than there is a speed pad. The Steelseries is much more of a balance between control and speed. It actually has the nicest glide, I think, in the market. But the Zowie GS-R just has more stopping power, which means that if you slide your mouse from left to right and you see an enemy, you can stop really quick. Whereas with the Steelseries QCK Plus, you are much likely to glide a few millimeters more, for example. So that's one thing I really like about the GS-R, and that's actually the reason why I prefer it over the QCK Plus. I'm using this mouse pad now. I haven't switched back because it just gives you that great control. You really have the feeling that you and your mouse just can make any movement you want and can just stop anywhere you want. And I prefer that much more over the speed of the QCK Plus. Another thing I disliked about the GS-R is that it had a curl for a really long time. This mouse pad, it came rolled up in a box like this, and when you first unrolled it, it stayed up, the edges stayed up curled like this for a really long time, and that was super irritating. It took weeks before it was completely flat like this. The SteelSeries one is much more usable right out of the box. I really had to put books on it and flatten it with a iron, so I put a towel on it and made sure that it got flat. Another good thing about both mouse pads is that they really don't have any inconsistencies, and what I mean by that is that this upper edge until this edge, it would just feel exactly the same when moving your mouse. So you won't feel faster or less resistant places, which is the case if you're playing with really cheap mouse pads. When thinking about getting one of these, it really comes up to personal preference. My first mouse pad was the QCK Plus, and I've enjoyed that for years, but now I really like the control of the GS-R and would be really hesitant to switch back. Well, the fairest advice I can give is that if you're more of a control player or a low sensitivity player, maybe go for the GS-R. And if you're looking for speed or more fast-paced FPS shooters, then go for the QCK Plus. The Zowie GS-R is actually more expensive than the QCK Plus, so if you're short on budget, then definitely go for the QCK Plus. You won't notice any hard differences if you've never used both pads. So if you're not used to a really good mouse pad, then actually the choice is really easy. You can go with whatever. Just take the cheaper one or the one that looks nicer. Alright guys, so that was my comparison of these two mouse pads. Honestly, they're both really great mouse pads, so it's a tough choice choosing between the two, but I hope this video helped you a little bit, and I hope you enjoyed the video as well. If you have some questions about mouse pads, just leave them in the comments below, and I might make a video answering the top questions. And if you like the video, just hit a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay up to date. I have a SteelSeries QCK Prism which I'm going to unbox soon, so if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more of me, then make sure that you subscribe. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye bye.